Hi, my name is Katie and I'm a travel advisor. I specialize in Disney and theme park vacations, though I can help you travel anywhere. And today I'm here to tell you about traveling to Walt Disney World with an ECV or a scooter. So I have frequently visited Walt Disney World, but I recently visited a few times with my mom who is using an ECV or electric scooter while she is in the parks. Now in the regular world, she does not use a scooter or an ECV, so she is able to walk, but the amount of distance and the heat and all of the things that go together to make a Walt Disney World vacation meant that she was concerned about how far she was going to have to walk and her stamina, so she chose to use an ECV or scooter. Now, many guests at Walt Disney World use ECVs and scooters, and I think that my mom's story is a frequent occurrence. People who don't use these vehicles in their regular everyday life, but when they're faced with wanting to go to Walt Disney World and doing something where there's going to be a lot of walking involved, they decide to use a scooter or they have to use a scooter. So I wanted to share some of the tips and tricks that we learned as first-time ECV scooter users and how we set up our trips with these two different vacations over 2 years at Walt Disney World using a scooter. So this is going to be focused on guests who have the ability to stand and walk, who have the ability to transfer from their scooter into a ride vehicle. I'm going to share some things as well about guests who do not have that ability, who do not have the ability to stand and walk, but that is not the experience that I have been a part of. So we're going to focus more on guests who can get in and out of their scooter and can stand and walk. All right, first up, how are you obtaining a scooter? So unless you're driving and you own a scooter and you're bringing your personal scooter, you're going to need to get one once you're in Orlando. You have two options. The first option is that you can rent them directly from Walt Disney World. This is done inside the parks, right at the entrance gate, and you can do this in all of their theme parks. However, this is only to be used while you are in the theme park. So you cannot use it at your hotel. You cannot use it to get from your hotel to the theme parks. You also cannot reserve these in advance, and they can and sometimes do sell out, so you do run that risk. So if you're going to more than one park per day, you are able to rent the scooter from the first park, return it when you leave that park, and then pick up another one at the second park. You are charged per day. There is a discount if you're going to book it for more than one day during your trip, but that is how it works if you're going to rent it directly from Disney. Now, my suggestion is that you do not do that. My suggestion is that you rent from an outside company. There are several companies within Orlando, and I work with several of them as a travel advisor, where you can rent your scooter directly from this company. They will deliver it to your Walt Disney World resort, and they will pick it up when you are done. That means that you're able to use this scooter throughout your entire length of stay, around your hotel, on transportation, and in the parks. You also, it's yours for your length of stay. So you do not have to worry about not having access to it. If there's a technical issue, companies will work with you to deliver a new one if needed. Many will even deliver it directly to the parks. As well as there's a lot more options if you are renting off-site scooters from a different company. There's often a lot more seating options, storage options, accessory options, and they're just higher end models. I think they're maybe cared for a little bit differently than the ones that you're renting directly from Disney. So it is my advice to rent from a third-party company in most situations. The only downside is that often you have to meet that third-party company in order to do the pickup, though most drop-off can be done without meeting the company. And then something I recommend considering is decorating your scooter, not just for fun, everything from signs to go on the front and the back, or Christmas lights, things like that, but in order to also quickly recognize your scooter when you are picking it up at the end of a ride or if you have parked it somewhere. Same thing goes for baby strollers. It makes your life a lot easier if you have something that you can quickly spot and know that that's your scooter. If you're thinking about adding on some accessories to your rental, the most popular is probably a sunshade, and we did rent a sunshade each time that we rented a scooter. and we found it challenging. We found it harder to navigate, harder to see around so that you're not hitting things and people, that it would hit things like the Skyliner door and walls. We also found that it would affect where you could be seated. So some of the show seating for scooters, they'll seat you in the front, and we could not do that when we had a sunshade on, so it could affect that. So really, we ended up taking it off more often than not, and it was not worth it. All right, now you have your scooter in hand. How are you going to deal with it being in your hotel room? So first of all, getting it in the door is not a problem. These scooters will fit through all of the Walt Disney World doors, no matter what hotel you're staying at, so you're okay with that. If you're going to be needing some handicap features in your room, like hold bars in the restroom and lower beds and things like that, then you're going to want to book a handicap accessible room. We did not need that, and I think that that is the case for a lot of ECV guests. The size of standard hotel rooms at Disney World, almost no matter what room and no matter what resort, you are gonna be like, the scooter's gonna take up a lot of room. I will say that. It's gonna take up a big space, but we just had 2 guests in the room and we found it okay that we had a scooter. It wasn't a big problem, although sometimes you did have to like walk around it in certain spaces. However, if you had like 4 guests staying in a standard room plus a scooter, that's going to be close quarters, and I think you are going to want to think about upgrading to a family suite or a villa or a suite, something with more foot space so that you can get that scooter in there. You'd have the option of charging it and then putting it out in the hallway so you didn't have to deal with it all the time, but that's based on your comfort level with leaving this expensive thing out in the hallway. I don't think I would do that. So speaking of hallways, the value and moderate resorts all have exterior hallways like you're seeing here. So it is going to make your life a lot easier if you request a ground floor room. Then you're not having to deal with going in elevators and going around with the scooter. It's going to make your life easier. Now here's a look at a deluxe level room. This is the Contemporary Resort, and you can see that the size of it's pretty much the same. So it's really that next step up, that family suite at one of the value resorts or a villa at one of the deluxe resorts where you're going to have a lot more space. Here's a look at a 1-bedroom villa at the Riviera, and you can see there is a lot of space here because you have a whole living area, so you could have many options of where to park your scooter. I think if you are a family or a couple traveling with more than one scooter, if you have 2 scooters, you really have to do a larger room. All right, so we're in the hotel room. Now we need to get from our hotel to the theme parks. The most popular, the main kind of transportation is buses at most resorts. So buses are all equipped to have 2 ECVs or wheelchairs minimum in the bus. And this is how the process is going to work. You are going to line up in the wheelchair or ECV line, which is indicated on all of the bus stops. Just look for the little painting on the ground. And then you are going to wait for the bus driver to indicate that it's your turn to get on. Scooters and ECVs will be loaded before the other guests. So they are going to roll out the ramp. You're going to scoot up the ramp. You're going to scoot into position here. They are going to buckle you in, and then you're going to be good to go. They're going to put the ramp back up, raise the bus back up. Guests traveling with you on your ECV are going to be asked to get on the bus, and then all the other guests are going to be asked to get on the bus. When you're getting off the bus, it is the opposite. All of the other guests will exit the bus, then the bus will lower, the ramp will lower, and we will get you off the bus. Each bus driver I found had a little bit different tactics. Some of them wanted to be a little bit more hands-on on helping the guest get onto the bus and get parked. Some a little bit more hands-off. So, work with the bus driver that you have. And as always, a cast compliment is great. You can put that in through your app if you had a really great bus driver that was really helpful and positive with your scooter experience. My mom found that the more she did this, the more confident she got in doing it. And by the end of the first trip, you're very used to it. and you're scooting on down. Now, only 2 scooters can fit on most buses, so occasionally, especially if it's a very busy time, you might have to wait for that second bus to come around, but you know what? You might have to do that if you're standing in line too. So just know that. I think the bus process is a little bit daunting, but I promise it will get easier the more times you do it. Next up, we have the Skyliner, which is Disney's gondola system. Now, as you can see, this is how people who are walking onto the gondola would board. The gondolas do not stop. They just constantly move. Now, if you're on an ECV, that'd be a little crazy, so they will stop for you. In most of the stations, there is a separate ECV line where the gondolas are doing their own thing. It will come off the main line, it will stop and wait for you. You will get on the gondola. Your rest of your party will then get on the gondola, and then you will rejoin the regular line and the gondola will fly off to where it's going. Now at the Riviera station, they do not have a separate area where the gondolas can pull off. So there, all the gondolas will stop and you will get on. They do have a separate line right next to the regular line. So whenever you're getting in any line for transportation, you're looking for that wheelchair handicapped sign. And they have little blocks that they will put underneath your scooter so that you will not roll while you are on the Skyliner. And my mom found that the Skyliner was the easiest transportation for her in the scooter. So that is something to really consider when you are picking your hotel. The Skyliner is easier than buses. Although if you have a fear of heights, I do not recommend the Skyliner, because it is up high in the air gondola system, so that is something to consider if you have a fear of heights. Getting off the gondola, they are going to stop the gondola, they're going to remove those little blocks, and then you're going to be invited to back out. So it is all pretty easy. It is much easier than the bus process. So next up we have the monorail. So for the monorail, you're going to get in the same line as everyone else. There's just one line. And then when it is time to board the monorail, you are going to scoot on down with everyone else. And one of the cast members has their eagle eyes out for anyone in a wheelchair or scooter. And they have a ramp that they are going to pick up. They are going to put down onto the car that they want you to enter. And you're going to scoot on up. You're going to be then just in the middle of the car. When you exit, someone is going to walk over with a ramp, put that down to help you exit. So just be sure to listen to cast members' instructions. And you're just going to scoot up that ramp and into the car that they're indicating. We found that they were very on top of things, looking out for guests who needed that assistance. Something to keep in mind in general, there are so many guests, so many guests on scooters and wheelchairs. It is not just you, so they are so prepared to help you out. And then lastly, there are some boats that are transportation from Disney resorts to Disney Springs and around the boardwalk and Epcot areas, and there are placements for scooters on the boat, so you're just gonna scoot right down on to that boat and go into the area where they indicate. Now our last kinds of transportation, the minivan, which is Disney's version of a rideshare. They do offer wheelchair and ECV accessible minivans. Now you have to specifically request that kind in the app. There are less of them, so you might have a little bit longer wait time. But these are vans that have wheelchair lifts, ECV lifts, and they can each accommodate one, I believe. All right, we've handled transportation and now we're at the park. It's time to go through security. Each security entrance is going to have a separate line or several separate lines for scooters, wheelchairs, and ECV devices. You are going to go in that line. You're going to pull up to the side of the metal detectors. If you can walk through the metal detectors, they will ask you to get up out of your device and walk through the metal detectors as anyone else would. Then you can get back in your device and scoot on your way. If you cannot, they're going to wand you, and that's how they're going to make sure that you are safe. They're also going to ask that any bags that are on your device are walked through security, if not by you, by someone else in your group. So as always, this is the most important line you're going to wait in all day, so be respectful and pack your patient's pants. Nobody likes going through security. So now you're through security and you're headed into the park. You're going to go to the same turnstiles that everyone else does. You are going to tap your magic band or whatever key you're using, and you are going to enter the parks. All right, getting around general areas, walkways and everything, everything is accessible. There are, ramps up to walkways and into theaters and everything like that. You can take the scooter into stores, you can take it into restrooms, you can take it into most restaurants. A lot of restaurants will ask if you are able to leave it outside unless you're using it as a wheelchair, and then they will either bring a wheelchair to transfer you to if the ECV cannot fit into the restaurant, or they'll let you bring the ECV in. But you're going to find that it's a lot easier to park the ECV outside of a store if you're physically able to do so, or to park it outside of a restroom or a restaurant. Make sure that it's covered, or you have a cover over it if there is at all a chance of rain. It is Orlando, so there's always a chance of rain because we do not want to get it wet. Oftentimes you can park your scooter with the stroller parking, and other times you will see scooters parked in designated areas or just sort of along the sides of buildings out of the way. You will always see, where someone else has done so. And it's going to be easy the longer you're in the parks to figure out where it's okay to park. And you can always ask a cast member as well. I would say the biggest challenge about getting around the park is when there are crowds. It can be very hard to maneuver, especially if you need to make a turn in front of a large group of people or something like that. I was not above standing in front of my mom and acting like a crossing guard and holding my hand out and saying, please hold on for a second, to other people, and, motioning for my mom to move forward and make the turn. I did that a lot of times. I didn't get any attitude from anyone about it. It was just what had to be done, and it made the situation easier. But of course, in a theme park, there's going to be times where there's big crowds. So either hang back, wait for the crowd to pass if you can, or just hop on in that crowd, pack your patient's pants, and expect that there are going to be a lot of distracted, excitable, busy people who are not looking out for people in wheelchairs and ECVs. So unfortunately, just do go into this situation expecting that, and pack your patient's pants, as everyone needs to do when they visit Walt Disney World, and just have that expectation going in that there's going to be some moments that are a little tough in crowds. Let's talk about waiting in lines for actual attractions in a scooter. So you can bring your scooter into 95% of the lines. The handful of lines that cannot accommodate scooters, typically because these are older attractions with smaller lines, they will have on hand a traditional wheelchair that you can utilize in the line if you cannot stand in the line. Again, the vast majority of attractions, you're going to be able to take the scooter into the line with you. So you're just going to go through the regular line. When you get up to the front and it is time to board the attraction, if you are able to transfer into the ride vehicle, which that's most of the folks I'm talking to right now, those in ECVs that are able to transfer into a ride vehicle, who can walk, stand up, and get into a ride vehicle, you are going to be asked to park your scooter in a designated area. Team members are going to be at the end of the line. They're going to ask you to park your scooter. And then if it is a ride where you're going to exit the ride right in the same spot, your scooter's going to be in the exact same spot where you left it. You're going to hop back on and exit. If it is a ride that where you exit the ride is different from where you entered the ride, cast members will move your scooter for you, and it's going to be waiting for you as soon as you exit the ride. So long story short, they're going to get that scooter to where you're going to be when you get off this ride. Now, the question you're going to get every time you get to the front of a line is, can you transfer? And if you can stand up and get onto a traditional ride vehicle, you're going to say yes. If you cannot, there are vehicles such as this that can accommodate wheelchairs on many of the rides. And you're going to see listed in the ride descriptions on the website, on the park maps, and in the app, which rides can accommodate guests to not have to transfer to be able to stay in their wheelchair. Now, there are lots of shows at Walt Disney World, and so seating for the shows is something you're also going to want to consider. You have the option to park that ECV and not bring it in with you and just sit in a standard seat and collect the ECV when you exit, or you can stay in the ECV and be placed in the ECV seating, which is usually in the very front or the very back. The process and the exact seat is going to vary a little bit based on the specific show, so just always communicate your needs to cast members and they're going to work with you to best find what works for you and what works for the whole theater. Overall, we found that Disney was very well set up to accommodate guests in scooters and wheelchairs as far as accessing the lines and the rides. Now, for guests who have a physically or emotionally difficult time waiting in these lines, even if seated, there is the Disability Access Services Program. It's undergoing a bit of an overhaul here in 2025, and it has been limiting who is allowed to use the program. If you think that's something that you might qualify for, I urge you to look into it on the Walt Disney World website. It is the DAS, or Disability Access Services Program. Okay, now let's talk about the greatest show at all of Disney World, the fireworks, and specifically wheelchair and ECV seating for the fireworks. There are designated areas you can see here highlighted in blue at the bottom of the map for those in ECVs or wheelchairs. Now, to sit in these areas, you do not have to have any sort of DAS or special privileges as long as you are in a wheelchair or a scooter, or you are accompanying someone in a wheelchair or a scooter. Now, if you're in a very large group, they may limit the number of guests that can go with the person in the wheelchair to a party of like 4 to 6. So keep that in mind. Now, these are very popular seating areas, so I want you to get to this seating area 45 minutes to 1 hour before the start of the show. That is what the crowd is going to look like about an hour out. You can see we've got front row seating here. I would say about 30 minutes to 20 minutes before the show, these areas fill. They're very popular. There are a lot of guests that need this seating, and the fireworks are very popular. So if you show up 10 minutes before the show, you may not be able to have a seat here, or you might end up with a seat that's no better than if you just pulled up on Main Street somewhere. The big perk of this, as well as getting a good view, is that there's not 1,000 people standing in front of you while you are seated, so you have the opportunity to actually see the castle. You can see this is what the normal crowd looked like about 45 minutes before the show, and I think that this is a really great opportunity for those in ECVs or wheelchairs, so I do highly recommend trying this if fireworks are a priority for you. Magic Kingdom also has a designated viewing area for the parade for ECVs and wheelchairs, but I don't think it's as critical as the fireworks, because for the parade, you can plan ahead and get a front row seat anywhere on the parade route as long as you're getting there like a half an hour to 45 minutes in advance. And you're going to have to show up that early anyway to the wheelchair seating area for the parade if you want a decent view, so I don't think that's as much of a priority. For the fireworks at Epcot, there are 3 designated areas for wheelchair or ECV seating. Number 1 is my favorite area. I think that's going to give you the best view, but 2 and 3 are also good. Now, it's not like the castle where you want to be able to see the projections on the castle itself, so I don't think the wheelchair seating is as critical. But I think it really helps to be able to not have a lot of people standing in front of you. Again, I'm going to want you to get here at least a half an hour in advance, closer to 45 minutes if you really want a front row seat. So we have covered all of the bases, really. Let's talk about my top planning tips before you get to the park if you know you're going to be traveling with an ECV. That first big decision you're going to make is, are you going to rent privately from a third-party company and have it delivered to your hotel, or are you going to rent from the parks and only be using the scooter or the wheelchair in the parks? I think 9 times out of 10, you're going to be better off doing that private rental from a third-party vendor. As a travel agent, I can help you with that if you are my client. Number 2, are you going to get a sunshade, or are you going to get any sort of accessories? I lean no on the sunshade, but if you are very, very sensitive to sun, that might be something that you want to consider, because it is hot. Pretty much no matter when you go to Disney World, it's going to be sunny. All right, The third thing you want to think about is picking the right room and the right hotel. This is something that a travel advisor can really help you with. As we talked about, some of the standard rooms can be very cramped if you have more than 2 adults plus an ECV, so you might want to look at a family suite or a villa. As far as also picking the right hotel, there are many hotels across Walt Disney World property, and the thing you're going to want to think about the most if you're traveling with an ECV or a wheelchair is what transportation is offered from this hotel to where I'm going to go. So if you are mostly looking at a Magic Kingdom stay, you might want to deeply consider one of the hotels on the monorail loop. The easier your transportation is to and from the parks, the easier your whole vacation is going to be, as well as the fact that many of the resorts have garden-style buildings and not one central building. So how much you want to have to get your scooter in an elevator, also something to consider. And lastly, the big thing that I want you to plan for is to put extra time into your day. Plan that it's going to take you longer to get anywhere or do anything than you think it would. Because you have the ECV, it's going to take you longer to get places. It's going to take you longer to get on and off of rides, perhaps. It's just put some more time into that plan and always plan some extra cushion time. Okay, top tips for while you're at Disney World with a scooter. Pack your patience. There's going to be distracted people. There's going to be crowds. There's going to be rude people. There's going to be people who just are not thinking about others during their vacation. And everything's going to take a little bit extra time. So set that expectation and pack your patience just for the whole vacation. And then decorate your scooter so that you can identify it, and because it's fun, but at least tie a scarf on it so you know it's yours. Set yourself up for comfort. If you think you might want an extra padded seat, maybe bring that along with you. If you think that you are going to be storing a lot of things on your scooter, pack bags that are going to hang well off your scooter or hooks, things like that. And then if you are in a situation where you need to, advocate for yourself and speak up. Cast members are always going to ask you, can you transfer? Is this going to work out for you? So make sure to just tell them what you need. And then if you're in a situation, where you're walking through a crowd or something like that, and just you're being disrespected or ignored, it's okay to speak up for yourself and your party, to direct traffic for a minute. Of course, we all always want to be kind and polite, but sometimes you just need to speak up for what you need, and there's no problem with that. And then lastly, you belong in the magic. No matter what the reason is that you are going to need an ECV or a wheelchair, if you broke your foot the day before you left, or if this is, a chronic lifelong situation where you can't walk, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why you're in the ECV, and it's no one else's business why you're in the ECV. You belong there just as much as anyone else who is walking on their feet. So don't let yourself be embarrassed or sad or feel in any way bad about the fact that you are visiting a theme park in an ECV, because that's what you need to do right now, and you do you, and everyone belongs in the magic of Disney World. And I will say, if you're someone who maybe does not use these devices in your everyday life, and maybe this is the first time you'll ever use one of these devices on this vacation to Disney World, I think that it can sound really scary in the lead up, but once you're there, there are so many other people using it. Everything is set up to help you have the best vacation. I think that once you're there, once you're in it, it is not going to be as scary as maybe you've built it up to be. All right, that is using an ECV at Walt Disney World. Once again, my name is Katie. I am a travel advisor, and I specialize in Disney and theme park vacations. I would love to help you plan your next vacation to Walt Disney World or anywhere else with or without an ECV or wheelchair. I would love to be your travel agent. So you can contact me at the information on your screen. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope it eased any concern you might have about traveling to Walt Disney World with an ECV. Please like and subscribe and have a magical vacation.